welcome back to the Prosperous Empath. Kat here. I am so excited to share today's conversation and two important people in my life with all of you today. I'm so honored to have Bob Conlon and Alex Terranova join me on the podcast today. I have known both Bob and Alex for 6 years now. I've worked with each of them in different capacities as coach trainers and colleagues. We all originally met through the same coach training program where we all trained together. And I just have such respect and admiration for who they are in the world, for what they're up to in the coaching industry, and for how they have evolved their coaching practices and the work that they're committed to. Bob and Alex are the co-founders of the Alchemy of Men, and they have created this beautiful community and path to support men in discovering their authentic selves, evolving from boys to men, becoming more self-expressed, and building lives that they can be proud of. Now, here's the thing. The reason I am even more excited to share this episode with all of you today is because probably the topic that comes up most in coaching is deepening intimacy in romantic relationships. How do we understand our partners better? As women, how do we understand our male identifying partners and vice versa, and between all genders? And this is really a new perspective on that conversation, and I was really interested in interviewing Bob and Alex from the perspective of being men and being like pretty masculine dudes and really just sharing like how can we as women understand our partners more, get more of our needs met, partner better, be more intimate, be more vulnerable, allow our partners to lead and understand us better, and just partner on a deeper level and create deepened levels of connection and emotional safety and intimacy in our romantic relationships. It is such a beautiful conversation. And given that I have just so many years of relationship with Bob and Alex, we get to go really deep, really fast. I really hope you enjoy today's conversation. If you're looking for ways to connect with me more intimately, come join us for our next non-networking power hour. It's coming up on Monday, July 15th at 12 noon Eastern Time. We'll include the link in the show notes. It is our monthly invitation to come and connect with like-minded empathpreneurs and really just get supported in a deep and meaningful way by values-aligned empathpreneurs. And if that doesn't work for you, join our online community. We'll drop the link for that in the show notes as well. With that, enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to the Prosperous Empath podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Alex and Bob, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It was a little bit like a walk down memory lane, being with the two of you. I haven't been or spoken with either of you in, well over a year, I think. So for our listeners, Alex and Bob and I used to be leaders together in accomplishment coaching, where we all individually trained as coaches together and served in different roles and partnered in different ways. So we have lots of relationship, lots of experience knowing one another in many different capacities. And just so, actually, I feel like a little emotional having you both on the show today. So it's really an honor and a total delight being with you. And by way of getting us started, I'd love for either or both of you to share your pronouns and a little bit about your story, because I think that we all learn through the power of storytelling.
Yeah, I'll go first. He, him. I guess the story I want to tell, just because I'm with you again, Kat, is one of so my whole journey really has been understanding that I ultimately have the control in how I want to experience life. Like I get to control the lens in which I get to view not only myself but others, the people I love, the people I get to impact. And we were at a leadership retreat, and I was totally in my stuff, totally. And what I mean by that, I was like, um, really disempowered, kind of in a huge walking complaint, a lot of emotions. Not that those are bad, but I just wasn't in my power. And you said something to me that made a huge difference for me, and I just want to share that with you on this podcast. And it was, I shared everything I needed to share. I got all that crap out of me, and you're like, "Well, what's the difference you want to make from where you're at?" And I was just like, it was one of those like comments or questions that kind of like resets you and calls you forward at the same time. And I share that because I think that's so much of who I am as a father, who I am as a husband, and who I am as a leader. Is I have people around me to remind me that I get to step into who I'm committed to being at every turn. And I know that's like a very privileged like way of living and experience of life. And it's one that like I also created, that there's people that love me enough in my life, Alex, obviously one of them, that will call me forth even in the hardest and most challenging times into creating not only the experience I want, but the man I want to be while I'm experiencing it. So that's my story that I will share by a way of kind of introduction. I live in Chicago with my beautiful wife. I have a almost 4-year-old son. I just turned 49. I got into the fatherhood game pretty late, and I'm learning a ton about what it means to be a really good father. And I'm doing a great job, and it's a lot of work, and it's really hard. But yeah, that's me.
That's awesome. I love that story. And I think the thing that touched me most is just hearing you acknowledge I'm doing a great job. Right? It's so nice when we can acknowledge our strengths and our gifts and the ground taken.
I was sitting here and I'm like listening to Bob, and there's so many stories running through my head. I'm like, what story to tell? And the thing I do want to tag, like kind of piggyback Bob and say, when I was building my coaching practice, I probably wouldn't still be sitting here like almost a decade later from when I started if it hadn't been for your support, Kat. So like if you and I hadn't, this is before Bob and I were even friends. Bob hated me at this point, but like back then,
Sure, it was you were the hater then.
no, Bob hated me. I didn't even know. I was like, Bob doesn't exist. But yeah, like I think, during a lot of those early years, like when I remember when we did like B school together and we were like supporting each other a lot. Those were the like early challenging years of my business, and you were a really powerful support structure. And I don't know if I'd be here. I started this journey in 2015. So I don't know if in 2024, I'd still be here doing this and having grown it and the life I have and the wife I have, if it weren't for some people like you that really kind of like locked arms and stood by me during those early years. So I'm really grateful. It's so cool. It's cool to now come like full circle. You back when I used to podcast, you were on my podcast. And so the thing I want to share though, that I think like about me is, for most of my life, I didn't like myself, and it wasn't overt. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't like self-harm in like a direct way where you'd be like, he needs therapeutic help or something. I just had an internal, like, I'm not good enough. I should be different. There's something wrong with me. Um, I'll never live up to what I think I should. I'm going to disappoint people. And the wacky way that came out was I was a jerk. I was like an asshole. I don't know if I can say that on here, but I can't. I was a jerk. I was egotistical. I used alcohol to like dull the pain, and I like chased women to kind of get a sense of life out of myself and a sense of self-worth. Like if I could win with women, then I could win with myself. And the thing that's happened recently is I had an experience recently where I've never liked my name. And I've like never liked my name, Alex or Alexander. And I've just always wanted it to be different. And then probably like 6 months to a year ago, I was in a plant medicine ceremony, and I had this experience where I really got to connect with like my soul chose this suit, this meat suit to come into, this avatar. And it showed me all the ways that I chose it on purpose for exactly what I'm here to do. And I was having this like just this experience of for the first time, like deep self-love and understanding of like, you chose this being to come into and live this experience as on purpose for all these reasons and whatnot. And in that experience, I got this reflection of, and you chose your name. You channeled we channel our names like through our parents. And so what they choose is actually by like us as souls, is what I believe. And you chose your name, and your relationship to yourself is reflected in the fact that you don't like your name. And now I was sitting with Evan, my wife, just we're like talking about child names for our future children or our future child. And she looks at me and she goes, well, I don't want to say like that's still been the biggest challenge I've had in my own journey is like loving myself. I've leaps and bounds in so many areas and completely transformed my life, but loving myself has been like the hardest part of my journey. And my wife says to me, "Do you know what your name means?" And I was like something about like king or whatever. And she goes, "That your name means man's defender, warrior." And I like got chills all over my body and got present to at 42 years old, like that's what I'm doing now. Right. Like I describe myself as I'm here to support men to become the leaders that their families and their businesses or companies can be proud of. And we lead a retreat where I think of myself as a sacred guide for men. And there was something like, oh my God, like you literally chose this name that embodied like who you were going to be before you ever knew you were going to be it. And so I love how Bob was speaking into, we get to like live into the people we want to be. But I also have it that there's some like mythical or like, there's some space out there that's already kind of the possibility for us has already been chosen by us. And then it's up to us to find that and then live into it.
Wow, that's amazing.
I think I was there at that weekend that you had.
You were
like, yeah, and there was like 3 other people in that room named Alex, which is like even more hilarious.
Well, I want to share one of my own Alex stories. I have so many. But I actually think this is probably, yeah, right. But I think this is probably a great segue into the conversation. And, for our listeners who, we talk about empathic business here a lot. And we also talk about creating the accountability structures sufficient to your level of resistance. And for me, in many of my early years of business, that person was Alex, because we were always calling forth for one another. We had a weekly co-working call for several years that I always showed up for on time because my partner was Alex and I was his partner. And we were challenges for one another. And so I have a lot of gratitude for you as well, Alex. And Alex and I served on a leadership team together for a year and a half.
Yeah, probably ish.
And I remember one of my favorite reflections I gave you. I wonder if you'll remember this. But I reflected that you occur like a tank, that a super hard exterior and a really soft inside. And I think for me, that's why I've always felt safe and like instant relationship in your presence, because as an empath, I felt like I always sensed that tenderheartedness on the inside that just created instant relationship and trust and rapport. And I think in men's work, a lot of the work the two of you do in the world is probably has a lot to do with connecting men with their open heartedness and intimacy work. And I'm wondering, maybe we start there. Like, what's the journey been like helping your community open their hearts?
It's so good. It so like resonates for me right now. It's such a good reply. I totally remember that. And I've had the experience recently where in like deep meditation, deep practice, had the experience of I had to become a tank to create the life that I've built. And that's great. And to support the men that we want to support. And the magic is in the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Is that we need the strength to like hold the container. Right. We have 25 men in a space, or we have men that we're supporting in men's groups or coaching groups, whatever it is. Like we have to create a very sturdy ceiling, walls, ground, right? Like men need to feel safe. Cause I think it's kind of while women, I think more often don't feel safe out in the world, like there's more physical harm, right? Like that you have to be on guard for. Men are having a different experience of being unsafe. Men don't feel safe sharing their truth, sharing their emotions, sharing their actual experience with anyone because they've been taught that it's like not okay or it's weak or whatever. And I think Bob and I both like have created ourselves to be very, very strong. But that the way that we actually get to support men is through, once we've created that safety, then it's all through how soft and gentle and into our feelings we can get to like model for them that it's okay for them to get there too. And if we weren't strong and sturdy, we wouldn't feel safe enough to go there, regardless of whether they're going to follow us or not.
Yeah, and like why would they? Or why would why would I? I think very similar to Alex, like very early on in childhood, I learned that if I built a big enough wall around me that no one could get in and nothing could come out. And while that worked from a protection standpoint, and it really had me drive a lot of my own self-sufficiency and success, it was very limiting in what was actually available for me in experiencing life, like as a man, but as a human being in general. I had a whole spectrum of emotion and feeling that I did not have access to, and or if I did have access to it, I created a judgment around it. So if I was sad, I'd make a judgment around being sad. Or if I was angry, it was really easy to project it onto someone else, like take no responsibility for anything. And one of the biggest breakthroughs I had early on in my journey was finally giving myself full permission to feel whatever I was feeling, and like to feel it but not be it. Like I can have anger but not be angry. I can have sadness but not be sad, right? And actually, the book "The Power of Now" by Eckhart Tolle, like that book changed my life. And like one of the first pieces of gold I got from that was like, just be the watch, like just watch what's going on inside you, so you can actually name it. And I think what we do so well, like at our retreats and in our men's groups, is we get guys connected to like what is it actually going on for you? What is the truth there? And we're able to do that because I think Alex and I have done that for ourselves. Like we can speak our authentic truth without judgment and without worried about like how it impacts others, trusting that whatever that impact is, like we can clean it up or like whatever, right? And I feel when guys give themselves permission to feel, to get back in their bodies, get into their heart, it creates a whole other spectrum and possibility for life, mainly by the support of other men. like a community of other men. We're so, generalized, but like, I think as men, like we're so isolated. We're so taught to be self-sufficient, to go it alone, to work harder, faster, stronger, not need help, not need support. Like, are there guys that are killing it doing that? Of course. And there's a missing on a whole other experience of depth of intimacy and of success that's available in a community of other men. So I really think, like Alex said, it's like creating a safe container to let men know that it's okay to open up that way, and it's, like we're not like sitting around a fire and like talking about like our feelings. And I mean, we are, but that's not, it's more of like we're sitting around a fire giving you permission to be you, whatever that is for you. And
So
guys just like crack and break. And for the first time, many in their lives have received full permission and support to be the man that they know themselves to be. And that's magic.
I'm like chomping at the bit here with follow-up
Sorry.
questions.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
apologies needed.
Yeah.
Because clearly the three of us are advanced coaches. We've been in this game for a while. We know the importance of putting down our walls and being authentic. And my sense is that some of your retreats are filled with people who are newer to this work, which is amazing and awesome. And it can take years to bring down some of those walls. So you've brought up two themes, which I think are really central for some of the male identifying figures in my life, and certainly with my clients over the years, like these themes of opening the doors to your tank, putting down your walls, sharing your feelings, your emotional interior. That's one theme. And then the second theme is around asking for support, like giving up the notion that you have to go it alone, which I think is much more, I mean, at least in my work over the past decade, like a lot more of a theme that comes up for male clients than female identifying. So how do you facilitate breakthroughs with folks who don't even know what breakthroughs are in some of these in-person retreats, right? These like themes that people have probably been avoiding for much of their life, don't even know it.
I mean, we go in like I mean, we get permission, of course, right? That whole weekend. But, as facilitators and leaders in the work, like, and the way we've been trained and like the work we've done ourselves, like we can see stuff that people can't see, like in their own lives, or see dynamics, right? And I was probably agree, but like day 2 or 3, like we're going in a little bit deeper with guys. And what I mean by going in is like we've seen enough and have heard enough to understand like the context or story or limiting belief that's getting in their way, right? Like good. There's like showing up in their relationships, their business, their health, whatever it is. And it's literally like saying the thing that no one has ever said to them, or being the thing that no one has ever been for them to get a glimpse, even just crack that door open to see what's possible if they like tear down that wall or like blow that tank up or whatever it is.
There's the one piece that you didn't, I agree with everything you said. And the only thing that you didn't say is, I don't actually think we do anything. And all we had to do is get them to show up.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part. Getting men to say yes and show up is actually the only hard part. Because once they're there, I don't care how good they think their poker hand or their poker face is, they literally show us all their cards like right when they show up. We see it in their hug, like when they walk in the door and we go to give them a hug, if they like immediately try to pull away or do like a bro-y kind of thing. We see it in the way that they either talk or don't talk, in the way that they share. We see it in the way that there's the first day, there's some guy who's a powder keg waiting to explode the first day every single time. And that guy blasts open the doors for everyone else, right? It's often also one of the most masculine dudes, like traditionally masculine, right? A big guy, muscular, like a guy who is kind of boisterous, loud, has a presence, is often one of the first guys to snap. And often we don't even do anything. We're just asking, like, tell us who you are. And a guy just starts crying. And we're not asking for that. We don't. And what when I say it's like we get to see who everyone else is in that moment, right? Some guys are like, okay, it's safe. Some guys wall off a little bit more. Some guys are really supportive and nurturing to that guy. But ultimately, we actually don't care either. If you don't show emotion in our space, that's okay. And if you show all the emotion, that's okay too. It's really, it's really about, hey, who do you want to be in your life and in your marriage and in your job? And this place, and Kat, you know this from like all our work with training coaches together, right? It's just that place is just like the gymnasium to like work some stuff out. And we just get to create this really cool, fun experience in usually beautiful houses in the mountains or in the desert or in great spots where all of a sudden, if we just create a safe enough space, like just being there is all that has to happen. And I don't think we've ever had a man who didn't like something didn't shift.
Yeah.
They might not go home and change their whole life, right? That's a whole different thing. But we have not had in I don't know, we've had like maybe 75 men. I'm making that number up. I don't know, 50, 75 men. We haven't had a man who like there isn't something that's different when there's something different about him when he leaves than versus when he showed up.
I think that's a good point. Like that, literally the hardest part is just getting the guys to like say yes. I mean, not to the retreat, but I mean, ultimately they're saying yes to themselves. Of course, they're like saying yes to the retreat and like the investment and the time and all that. But for me as a leader going into those experiences, it's always like trust the men, trust the container, trust. Like I think at one of our last retreats, I was like, Alex, I don't know if our stuff's good enough, you know, and like no evidence to that, but like just my own insecurities. And like, I think it might've been the biggest group and it was the most isolated and it was just like a lot. Right. And, I think it was like that second day and I was like, God, man, all we got to do is get them here. It's all we got to do.
And
And like,
just get out of the
get
way.
out of the way. Yeah. Like we're like the guides, we're just like, I wouldn't say even that. Like we're just like we're the pillars holding like the container, and the guys do so much work with each other and themselves, and that's like where the real magic is. Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate the humility of you both. I think that it speaks to the power of an effective coach. But also acknowledging that like so much of what we do is our own work so that we can be the transmission and the clearing for our clients to do theirs. And it actually makes me really curious about some of the work that both of you have done because, I know some of your journeys. I know you've done lots of healing around your relationships with the male figures in your own lives, so much relationship in the world of intimacy and in both of your worlds. And so I guess I'm curious, like, how do you see that your own work has facilitated you coming into doing men's work? I mean, when I met both of you, neither of you were doing men's work, right? So let's hear about that transformation. How'd you get here?
I'll go first, Bob. I think the origins of the journey were like logical or in the very like practical, cerebral sense, right? The work we did in accomplishment coaching, like learning about all our automatic behaviors and automatic responses and whatnot. And I think some of the beauty about that work was it really showed us who we were being. It really taught us, to me, that's ultimately the foundation of everything we're doing is who we're being and how we're showing, right? And who we're being in all areas of our life. And for me, that work can take you so far, right? I can only go so far in having a conversation in my conscious brain. If I can't get to my subconscious, I think there's a limitation. I believe this for everyone, but I'm just going to speak for myself. I think after a certain amount of years, I just felt like, man, I know what I know, but I need to get to the things that I don't know that I don't even know, right? That like that stuff in the back of your mind that we just like can't get to. And I think that's when my real adventure started, because there was always safety in the conscious conversation. But when I got into the unconscious conversations, which for me started being around like plant medicines, so ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, Bufo, like those, even MDM, like MDMA, like those type of, but not all these things done in ceremony, being held like responsibly, not just like doing these things and like going out on the street and wandering around, but doing these things with intention, with guides, often led by music and often very ritualistic fashion. All of a sudden, I was able to get into parts of my brain that I just didn't even know existed. And parts of my heart were able to open that I couldn't consciously open up. And that was just a game changer. That's taught me how to love my wife, how to communicate with my wife differently. It's taught me how to accept, like, well, I'm still working on it, but accept my parents for who they are and who they're not. How to love and accept myself. And it's really showed me this work around men, that it's not our job to like do the work for them, but to kind of, I almost think about it as like we're carving like pathways, you know, in like being like, hey, you can come down this road with us and see what there is. Right? It's not the right way, but it's just not the road that you've been going down. And let's see what's like down these other roads, and we can try 5 different ones. But that it's taken the ego out for me. That's been like a big part. Most of the time you've known me. I was like, I just want to be like known and famous, and I want to like make an impact. And it's all that, like, I don't care about any of that anymore. All that, I just want to like be with men and make a difference for them. And like at the end of my days, feel like, well, I had a purpose here and I made a difference, and the world is like a little bit better than I found it.
I mean, I really love that, Alex. Like I hear just so many threads of like letting go of the ego, right? Like the ego that had you want to be known, the ego that had you want to know, and really surrendering to what you don't.
It's easy, and it's easy. I think it sounds like scarier, but it's so much easier.
Yeah.
I even think about it, you know, when I'm in, you're in a pregnancy journey, you're in a house, right? You're in all these journeys. Like there's all our brain wants us to get scared, right? Where are we going to live? How are we going to pay for things? And I think that's actually that's a way harder conversation. That's the conversation most people are in, is like fear, anxiety, worry. And we've actually believe that that's normal, that like the fear conversation is normal. And I think the fear conversation is insane. And the conversation of actually surrendering to, I'm going to figure this out. I don't need I'm going to trust, I'm going to surrender. I believe in myself. I believe in my partner. I believe in the powers that be bigger than me. It's actually such an easier conversation.
Totally. I mean, Alex, I know that you and Evan are on your own pregnancy journey, and for whatever it's worth, for me, it was the breakthrough in surrender that allowed us to conceive more than a year after trying. And that breakthrough in surrender has created ripples of change and beauty and like a complete distinct experience of life for us ever since. Like we're going to be homeless tomorrow temporarily. Like, and I'm totally at peace with it. We're going to live in different states. I'm going with my parents. Parth's going with his parents. Like we're totally empowered. And it's like, I mean, can you imagine the former version of me being okay with that? And it's a really cool place to be. And I have complete faith and trust that it's all going to work out in divine timing.
I think my journey in the men's work started when my father died when I was 7. You know, I think that like that was the seed that got planted that I tended to until I became a father 38 years later. Right. From my father's death, I learned that men were dangerous, and I learned that men that I loved would leave me, so I didn't need them. And when I became a father, I was struggling. I was struggling with like who I was, like, of course, as a father, husband, but like as a man. And I didn't have a lot of, or I didn't allow, you know, a lot of support like that actually was making a difference for me, that was calling me forward in a way that made a difference. And the big like aha moment or realization that I had actually came out of a ceremony, and it was that men have represented a threat to me my whole life. But like what that threat meant was like, if you were bigger, stronger, more successful than me, I would like try to overpower you or like befriend you. And then if I perceived you as weaker or that you couldn't provide me anything, I would like energetically bully you, or I didn't need you. And talk about like stuff in my space that I was just so not present to. Like in the conscious level, like, and that was not there. But subconsciously, the energetics of every male relationship I've had for 38 years had that stuff in the space. Whether we were like best friends or not, there was still this like dynamic that was happening there, which limited me being fully present to give and receive in any relationship in general, but particularly with men. And when I was doing it to Alex, and like, we were kind of early on in our alchemy and men journey, but I was just like, whoa. And I remember sharing this with him. And it was just such like a moment of clarity and a moment of like direction and a moment of focus on like what's next for me in my journey. And like right around that time too, I was like, man, if I'm going to be stepping up into men's work as a leader, I need to be in men's work as a participant. That had me look into other resources outside of what I was creating, where I didn't have to lead and just go and be witnessed as a man. And I remember going to like my first men's event that wasn't my own with an attitude of like, I'm gonna, yeah, teach me something, or I'm gonna be there to take, or like whatever it was. And after that first event, I was just like, oh, man, did I need that? I needed that just for me, and it was ultimately, again, I go back to like, I finally felt safe enough to just be fully expressed, not only as like a man, but as a human being. I got to give myself that full permission to be expressed and to allow other men to then make a difference for me. And like in that own work, it's like had me step up to make even more contribution, to be of more service to other guys, to call them forward into the lives and relationships and experiences that they want. And I feel like in so much of my journey, I'm just like one or two steps ahead of anyone else that's with me. Like as a leader, right? Like I just got to be doing my own work and trust that the rest is going to follow. And like that's kind of been my journey for the last 10 years. And it's going back to that like humility piece. It's just like I'm still figuring out too, man. Here's what's worked for me, might work for you. I don't know. But I know if you're willing to figure it out with us, it's going to be a lot better or easier or more fun, or more impactful for all of us, which is good. And I think like my son, becoming a father, like my son he's such a catalyst for so much of my growth. He's only 4 years old and he's like the most powerful being in my life right now. And it's, like, because there was ways I was showing up that weren't what I was committed to. And it was like, what is going on? I was like, more work with other men, more work with men who are fathers, more work with men who are fathers to boys. And it was just like, all right, there's the work. And like, I'm an unconditional yes to growth. Always, always. Cause I didn't used to be, so I think I used to know everything and I don't know anything. I get slapped real quick on that one.
Bob, I really appreciate that you like acknowledged the humility piece in your speaking. I also just hear the threads of the security that you create, the security and safety you create by both of your willingness to acknowledge that you're only like one or two steps ahead of the conversations that you're in, that you've been there before and that you're like walking this journey. Because I think there's a lot of ego in men's work and in men's leadership. And I think the willingness to acknowledge and get off their own damn throne and just like be equals creates that container that we were speaking of earlier. So I really appreciate that. I'm mindful of the time, and there's a final topic I really want to delve into. Yeah, but real quick.
I just want to say one quick thing. That thing that you just said about the men and the leadership and the ego, and Bob was speaking about it too. I think that's what inspired us to do this together, is that there were so many people telling men how they should or shouldn't be, whether it's families, communities, countries, partners, or other men's work. men are supposed to be like this. This is what the masculine is supposed to be like. This is what the right, we do it for women too. It's right. It's not a just exclusively male thing. And that's where I got really like triggered and like I got triggered and was like, fuck all this. That work is nonsense. That work is for like messed up, like either super weenie, like soft guys or guys that are like aggro, you know. And I got called out by my wife and one of my best friend's wives and like, hey, if you don't see something you like, why don't you create something? And I was like, who am I to create this? But the thing, which is kind of where we started, is there was nothing for us to create except the space for men to step into and decide who they want to be. Like, who are the men they want to be, the fathers they want to be, the legacies they want to create, which I think we have to undo. It's actually more about letting go of all that we know about what it means to be a man to create the space for what we want to come through, versus what most people are doing is, come here, we're going to teach you how to be a man or teach you how to be a leader. It's like, we actually don't need more of that. Mm-hmm. Whatever people are teaching is not what we need, because it's what already exists. And if you look at the state of the world, leadership as it's going is not working. We need like a full reinvention. And I think like what we're doing is like creating that space for the undoing to allow what's next to flow through.
Mm-hmm. Well, I totally appreciate that. And I think it's that same undoing that there is to do in the interrelational dynamics between the masculine and the feminine. And that's where I want to close on today, because honestly, that's the topic that had me like most excited to connect with both of you and have you on the show, is talking about deepening intimacy and romantic partnerships between men and women, those who identify as men, those who identify as women, because I think there are these intimacy blocks. And I'm curious if you guys have heard of imago theory. Are you familiar with imago theory by Harville Hendricks? It talks about this idea that, for those who aren't familiar, that we attract the perfect partner to help us heal our early wounds at the time, like the perfect partner to heal our earliest childhood wounds, given where we are at in our journey right now. And I've seen those wounds bring couples together and tear them apart. And I am curious, I know that both of you have done so much work in your relationships. I've done so much in mine. Alex, you've supported me through so much of the work I did earlier on in my relationship. And probably one of the few I trusted with that part of my journey and process. And I guess I would love for you to speak to our female identifying listeners. Like, how can we support our partners, like create that safe space to support our partners in asking for help, letting us be that partner, like that equal partnership, and really rewrite some of these norms about power dynamics, and really like rewriting some of these stories that remain to be undone. I know this is a huge topic, but we can take it wherever you see.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic, and it's like, trust us, which is so dangerous, right? But trust us, acknowledge us, encourage us, call us forward, let us be able to lead. I feel that that's a big component. My marriage is amazing, and it's fierce, and it's freaking messy, and feels scary at times. And the thing that is so wonderful about it is that we can go through the mess and know that we are completely devoted to each other, no matter what. And so you talk about that level of safety, like, I love you and I don't want to see you right now, or like whatever it is. But, I think it's like, so those things like trust us, acknowledge us, like we have to in turn provide back. It's not like, and I think it gets so lopsided, or our roles get shifted, and like we're not playing to our strengths, but we're trying to overcome our weaknesses. And I think that creates a lot of conflict and breakdown in relationships, is that we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're fighting for, or like what we're surrendering to. And it's just not understanding some of the core relational dynamics that need to be there, which is like trust, devotion, understanding, caring, um, leaning back when we need to lean back, leaning in when we need to lean in, finding a partner that can like hold you at your worst and celebrate you at your best. And not make my breakdowns or my inadequacies or my insecurities or my challenges make anything about themselves, that they're strong enough and know themselves enough that they can just hold me in that. And when I look back at all of my relationships prior to my marriage, it was like two wounded animals trying to fight over who gets the Band-Aid constantly. And that's a losing game, And I think it's the importance that like both people have to be doing their work truly. And I think that's where men have not towed the line as much as like in male female relationships that the females have.
I'm gonna kind of hit a different like angle with this. And I think this can apply to either like gender specific, or if we could actually step out of gender and just go to the masculine and feminine energetics. So I think I say that because like right, as a woman, you could be in the feminine in your relationship majority of the time, and the man could be in the masculine. But sometimes relationships are flipped, right? The woman could be in her masculine, especially to be a successful woman in the world climate and world we live in. Often women have to step really into their masculine, and sometimes men are more in their feminine. And sometimes both people are doing both. But the reason I set this up is because I think at our core, the feminine is the spark, the inspiration, the desire. It's the birthing, the creation of whatever. Now that occurs inside of men also, or it occurs inside of women, and it occurs inside of our relationship. And I think where we've lost track is even when Bob was saying like we need to lead and let us lead, we actually both need to lead, but we lead in these different ways. The feminine leads in expressing the desire, and expressing the creation, and expressing the spark, the inspiration. And the masculine leads by taking that and then building from it. And I think that's where we've totally like gotten messed up in our world and our society is women are either doing all of it, men are either doing all of it, or men are just leading and they're not following. And I think a really powerful relationship operates. And again, we can take gender out of it. It could be two men, two women, two people that don't identify with gender at all, but we all have masculine and feminine energetics running through us. That identifying who's carrying that, like the desire spark, the inspiration spark, the birthing of the energy spark. And then the other person is I'm going to go build that thing and create that thing. I think we get really burned out when we try to do all of it. Right. And we can look at this in a business sense, right? If I'm the one who creates this idea and then I got to go build it also, that doesn't work so well, right? You need like the visionary and the builder. And I think that kind of exists inside of relationships dynamics. So for in the traditional masculine man-woman relationship, and like traditional is not even the right word, right? It's just like I want to say like ordinary. The way you can support your men is like express your desire. Like let your man feel you. Let him feel. When Evan shows me and lets me feel what she really wants, I am so inspired to go make that a reality for her. When she's like ordering me around or like complaining or why, like, right, that's not really our relationship. But if she was, I'm not inspired to go create that or do that. But when I can feel her desire, I want to go do all those things. And I'll give a quick example. When she at first expressed to me not wanting to work and wanting to just be a mom, it came from fear. Like, how are we going to do that? But when when later she expressed her desire of how much she wants to create a home and be a mom, I was like, my furnace got lit. And I was like, how do I provide at another level and build a life where we can have that? And that takes practice on both of our sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I really appreciate that we're ending on that note. I've been doing some work around trauma lately with Thomas Hubble, and he talks about this distinction of like letting people feel you feeling them, and how much safety and vulnerability and willingness that requires to let me feel you feeling me, like, oof. So I'm mindful of the time. And Bob, I know you got to hop. I really admire the work you're doing in the world. I cherish you both. I love you both deeply. Thanks for coming on the show today. In closing, maybe you could each just bottom line, like, what's the single thing that's made the difference in becoming the prosperous empaths you are?
There's two things. Cold plunges. I swear to God.
Yes.
Swear to God. It's like cold plunges have me happier and elevate my mood in ways that nothing else ever have. Not therapy, not coaching, not anything. Like cold plunges sustain me at a level of like, my mood is just better every day when I regularly cold plunge. But the other thing is quiet time and stillness and slowing down. And it's like a daily meditation practice that could be, it's really like a prayer practice almost. That could be from 10 minutes to an hour, but that it's whatever I need, that I get to reflect and go slow and see what emerges in the nothingness. And that's where all the best stuff has come from. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean everything Alex said, but also like for me it's spirit, and all the many ways that I get to commune with that, right? Is I think it has made the biggest difference for me. It's like the most perfect mirror back to who I am. And it's like a remembering, if that makes sense. And that remembering is where a lot of my understanding and power gets to come from.
Thank you so much, both of you. I thank you so much for the work you're doing. It's powerful.
Thanks for having us, Kat.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.